Hi everyone. In today's video, I'm going to do a guide on Arayashiki. I'll be talking through some of the useful cards and when you should be using them in what situations. And I'll also talk about kind of the management side of things. So, which Alaya card should you be leveling up to what level, how to really, what to buy in the shops and how to customize your sets, etc. All right, so now let's start off with all of the cards. Now, the color coding system for Alaya cards is actually really good. So you can filter by different colors here. So which is what I'm going to do. For all of the white cards, pretty much you can decompose all of them. If you have a bit of a collection kind of habit, so I kind of do, I just keep one copy of them. But if you are not too keen about that, then just break down everything for decomposition, for resources, for extra experience books. So that's absolutely fine. There's nothing really too good here in the white cards. For the blue cards, there are only one that I will keep, which is Cosmos Sensibility. Everything else, once again, you can decompose. What I tend to do with Cosmos Sensibility is that you can place it on Poseidon. For example, if you want to have your Poseidon quickly awakened, or what I tend to use the most for Cosmos Sensibility is, for example, equip it on my Seiya to ensure I can release my first ultimate as soon as possible. So, if you have any characters who you really want to rush the opening ultimate timing, then you can equip Cosmos Sensibility there. Otherwise, it's also very good in boss battle when you want to equip it on, for example, Leo or on Virgo Shun for their ultimate to kind of do the buff or debuff, etc. So that's also another use case why Cosmos Sensibility will be really handy. So yeah, like I said, out of all the blue one, Cosmos Sensibility is the only one worth going for. Everything else just decompose it for resources. For all of the purple ones onwards, keep everything because they are actually a lot rare. So I think purely from collection point of view, you probably do want to keep them just in case they are ever useful. But the one which I highly recommend and possibly among the top tiers, I'm not making a tier list because the color kind of indicates here. But if I am making kind of different differentiation between tiers, then the two best ones here would be Classic Strategy and also Might Makes Right. They work on any kind of DPS. So just put them on your highest damage dealing unit and they work very well there. So, they are possibly some of the best damage dealing cards in the game. So definitely two cards you should focus on. Aside from that, two other cards worth mentioning would be Knight Assemble and Furious Lion. You normally want to do is put them on utility characters. So what they do is they grant kind of like an overall team buff. So this one reduce damage taken by 2%. This one increase damage by 1.5% for all allies. So you normally want to place them on utility characters. Because normally what happens for support character, they are a set for support characters, and for your DPS, you have a set for DPS. But then you have certain characters who you are not really using for support, or at least not for continuous support, and you're not really relying them on damage dealing either. So some of the good example could be your tanks, right? I don't really need my tanks to do damage, and I don't need my tanks to buff up or heal my team. So therefore, it's a lot flexible in terms of what card I want to equip on my tank, and that's when this two card become quite useful. The other example would be other utility characters such as Sirius or let's say Mermaid Tetas. Normally, you use them for one specific purpose, which is one kind of like one-time buff. So in the case of Sirius, it's for their opening Cosmo boost and also attacking speed boost. But afterwards, Sirius doesn't really offer too much for the entire duration battle. Like he's really helpful for that beginning, but afterwards he doesn't do much, which is why you can equip those two cards on him without worrying about compromising kind of any other thing else. Same thing for Mermaid Tetas. Really, you use Mermaid Tetas in order for her to buff up one single unit. For majority of the game, she's not actually doing too much herself. Therefore, you don't need to equip any specific cards on her, and just kind of let this Knight Assemble and Furious Lion to grant this passive buffing for your whole team in the background. That works really well for those utility characters. I think those are all of the main purple ones. Out of the remaining ones, you also have this type of card. Let's say they all relies on normal attack and they kind of either bleed the target or burn the target. will poison the target. They are good in boss battles because they inflict some additional damage over time. So you can equip them in boss battles. But other than that, they are really only useful in very specific situations. For example, if I have a poison team, then I may want to equip my demon rose. If I have a burn team with babble, then I may want to do phoenix flame, etc. But yeah, overall, I think those cards are pretty average. Good, useful in boss battles, but outside of that, unless you have a really niche formation, then you can largely ignore them. Alright, so this is all of the purple card. Yellow cards, I think this is where the sweet spot is. Because some of the cards here are actually really strong, some amongst the best. In fact, I'm gonna start off with the two cards which I think are the best in the game, which is Ferocious as Fire and Fast as Wind. Those two cards are what I consider the best in the game right now. Ferocious Fire increase haste, and for those of you who don't know, haste basically affects how quickly you can release and attack what not attack sorry how quickly you can release a skill. Now it's only valid for the first 5 seconds of the battle. However, by 28 that's a huge improvement, and what this is really useful is for opening attacks, because let's say some of the classic example would be the best example I can think of right now is Sagittarius Seiya versus Taurus Aldebaran. Now this is very much in the meta as well. Sagittarius Seiya plus Virgo Shun, they're absolutely crazy. They do a high amount of damage at the beginning of the battle. One way to potentially counter that is to use Taurus Aldebaran, because Taurus Aldebaran will bounce off damage to the enemy with lowest HP. A lot of time that will be Virgo Shun, and therefore if you can knock out Virgo Shun, then therefore you can break their combo. However, because Ferocious Fire increase haste, so that's how fast you can release this skill at the beginning of the battle. What I found is that if you equip a knight with level 20, or maybe level 30, I can't actually remember the exact cutoff point, but somewhere around that, if you equip Sagittarius Seiya with Ferocious as Fire, you can actually outspeed the enemy's Taurus Aldebaran's bounce mark. So if you watch the animation of the battle, normally there's a mark underneath Taurus Aldebaran to indicate he's releasing this effect, and therefore he's bouncing off damage to another knight on your team who also have a mark underneath him. However, if your Sagittarius Seiya have, I believe it's level 20, I think that's sufficient, or maybe level 13, but have that level of Ferocious Fire, he is able to attack, use his opening attack before Taurus Aldebaran's attack, and therefore he is gonna knock down Taurus Aldebaran, and therefore interrupt the bounce mark, and you won't see this mark underneath any of your characters anymore, which basically means now Taurus Aldebaran is not able to reflect any damage back to you. And this is going to be extremely useful in kind of guild wars when, a lot of times people try to put up a Taurus Aldebaran to reflect damage and therefore prevent you from taking all 3 stars. Ferocious Fire is basically the easiest way of how you can overcome that with your Sagittarius A. And vice versa. You can also be sneaky and put Ferocious Fire on your Taurus Aldebaran to ensure that he's able to zone in on another character, even if the enemies Sagittarius Seiya have Ferocious Fire. So this is just a really OP card in general. And right now there's a lot of characters with opening attacks, and sometimes you do want to outspeed other characters, and this is basically one of the easiest ways you can outspeed other characters' opening attacks. So that's why this is very useful. Then the next really useful card, and the second best, well, maybe the best card in the game, is Fast as Wind. So this one just increased speed. It's no longer for the first 5 seconds, so which is why it makes it really strong. It's less relevant for opening attacks, but what basic speed does is increase how fast both your attacks and also your skill activations. And normally you use Fast as Wind on any character with really good looping skills. So the best example I can think of would be Aris Mu. Aris Mu's Crystal Wall is absolutely broken. As soon as he put on Crystal Wall, you are able to heal off your team as well as reduce damage by half. Absolutely crazy. In the meta right now, Sagittarius A is trying to deal massive amount of open attack, and sometimes what you want is you want your Aris Mu to activate his Crystal Wall as early as possible. Therefore, even if enemy Sagittarius A is able to do, let's say, 70% damage to all of your characters at the start of the battle, if you are then able to put up a Crystal Wall, you immediately recover and also protect you against subsequent follow-up attacks, such as the opponent's ultimates, etc. So this is why it's really good. And for this to work, you need Iris Mood to be able to activate Crystal Wall as fast as possible. And that's where fastest wind really comes in. This will allow you to activate your skills quicker than usual, and therefore generally, you want to play fastest wind on any character with really good looping skill, especially the support characters. But just in general, any character with looping skill, and that's why this is card is kind of really good. Um, yeah, I want to say this is the best card in the game, in my opinion, purely because this is a card which is so universal, right? Just think about, is there a character who you don't actually have a skill that you want to repeat quicker? I don't think there is any characters like that, unless you have someone who's literally just doing raw damage. But most of the time, you want their skills to be activated quite often, and therefore fastest wind is just going to be universal, and definitely like one of the best cards in my opinion, if not the best. So this is kind of two cards, which is why yellow is really good, like a sweet spot. The other really worth noting card will be this cards, which are specific to one type of character. So this one, for example, is only for assist character. This one is only for protector. This one is only for assassins, etc. They're all really good. They're a bit more exclusive, but they're really good cards in general. So definitely use that. And then you have a few other cards which are really good in the meta right now. One would be Standards Mountain and also Determined Heart. They are very good in kind of the Sagittarius Virgo Shoot meta because they reduce the damage of the first attack, will increase your defense for the first 3 seconds. So essentially, this is kind of anti Sagittarius as opening attack. Before, they may be able to do like 70, 80%, if not just wiping out your team with Sagittarius as opening attack. With this two card, you are now able to make sure your team actually survive and potentially come back from behind with your Iris Moose, Crystal Wall, or whatever. Right? So those two cards are absolutely crucial in the meta right now. Commerce Water, another really crucial one. Basically, what this does is reduce the duration of incoming no interruption control. In fact, normally this would be really useful once again on support characters. So let's say Iris Mu again, because it ensures Iris Mu doesn't get controlled too often, and therefore he can actually activate his Crystal Wall. So basically, once again, kind of very useful for any kind of character who really needs their skill to be activated as early as possible. Now, right now in the meta, because this is very much focused on Sagittarius Sayers opening attack, and that's why Determined Heart and Standard Mountain is really important because it really increase your defense for the first few seconds. However, some cards, such as this one, Spirit of Dragon, they will also be useful, but not right now, but in the future meta. This is because it decreased 30% of the first damage dealt by Arcane, which is basically your ultimate or might in combat. So right now, too much is relying on opening attacks, and therefore you may not actually last too long enough to really see the benefit of this. But once Sagittarius Seiya actually goes out of the meta in the future, when new knights are released, then eventually this card is going to increase in value. So that's a card maybe you don't have to level up too much for the time being, but definitely don't throw it away because I think it will increase in value in the future meta. And then that kind of brings us also to kind of the red cards where you also get what's the other one? Will of the Gods, very similar, reduce damage taken whenever you're attacked by an ultimate. So this is essentially like an upgraded version of Spirit of Dragon because this one only reduced the first attack, first ultimate. This is for all of the ultimate, even though the damage reduction is slightly lower. But once again, right now this card is not that good because the battle tends to end really quickly with Sagittarius Seiya. However, in the future, in a meta without such a Seiya, when you actually see the battle lasting a bit longer, this one will be very good card. So once again, don't waste too much resource leveling up now, but just keep it in your back pocket because they will be very useful in the future. In terms of the other red cards, you have upgraded version of Standards Mountain and Commerce Water. Very similar to what their yellow counterpart do. They would just have better stats effects. Yeah, better stats and better percentage of effects, etc. So pretty self-explanatory here. Then you have a few more character exclusive cards, starting off with Excalibur, only used for Libra Shuru and Capricorn Shura. A very good card, but those two are not the best characters. I mean, if you happen to use one of them, then this card is pretty good. But otherwise, this is pretty much a card you can ignore for the most part. This one is the biggest joke in the game. For you to even be able to use this, you need Virgo Shaka to be 11 star. So I don't even know what VIP level that is, but 99% of the players wouldn't be able to even use it. So just ignore this completely. And then I seen that exclamation. I'm gonna say something very controversial here, which is I don't think this card is that good. Well, actually, no. Let me rephrase that. I think this card is good. However, it's not worth it. The reason is this card is only gonna activate when you have three of your gold knights present at the same time. Right now, it's not gonna be too hard because a lot of the meta once again Sagittarius Seiya, Virgo Shun. It may be quite easy for you to find three gold knights. But let's think about in future. We already seen a lot of really crazy characters being released, especially a lot of light and dark characters, which are not gold knights, right? You have Poseidon, not a gold knight. You have Radamanthus, you have Poseidon. Sorry, Pandora. They're not gold knights. And in the future, you're gonna get God Close version of of Seiya, of Shun, of the big five essentially, and none of them are gold knight. So what you're actually gonna see is that yes, right now this card may seem really powerful, but in the future, you will see less and less Gold Knights actually available in your team. And therefore, this card is essentially just going to be useless. And that's why I think, maybe you can level this up to maybe level 10, 20, 30 at most, because it's still a very good card for the time being. However, don't waste too much resource on this card because eventually this card is going to go downhill and you just won't really be able to take advantage of it at all. So yeah, this is kind of my verdict on a scene exclamation. Cool. Now I'm going to talk about kind of how to manage different sets of cards. Now, normally what happens is you have your DPS equipping some of the more offensive cards. So, your might makes right, your of the one basically increasing attack, etc. And you have your support characters kind of doing the ones which will increase their defense to ensure they survive long enough to release their skills, or maybe those speed ones to ensure they can release their skills quicker. So that's the general rule of thumbs. Um, what happens here is that you can choose different set of alliance cards that you want to make. And my suggestion here is that you try to pick up them for different scenarios you may be using. What I typically do is I have my first set, which is for if I have multiple characters, then what would naturally be given to this character. So take an example here. I have my Sagittarius Aurorus. He is not in my main team. He's not in my starting five. I use him occasionally in my second team or third team, but not all the time. So therefore, he is not going to get the top five best set of alliance cards, and I intend to keep it that way because vast majority of the time I wouldn't be using him, and that's kind of means that naturally in my first set that I will be giving him will just be the leftovers after my first five set for my five strongest characters. And then I have my second set, which is the optimal set. And this is normally what I use in the guild wars, what in mazes. So this will be, if I have to build this character optimally, what would it be the best possible cards I would give to him? And this is why you can see here in my second set, the level of my cards are a lot higher because they're no longer those leftover cards. They're actually cards which can be quite strong. And then for the last set is normally those situational set. Most of the time it's going to be boss battle for any characters who participate in boss battle. So this is where you then want to potentially stack up poison effect, bleed effect, and that's why I brought in my the Aphrodite Roses card here, just to try to stack up my damage as much as possible. And pretty much, yeah, this is how I typically organize my alliance sets, just to have one which can be used kind of most of the time, and I don't need to compromise the best set, best card for my best characters. The second set is when I need to use it in very specific scenarios that I'll have to really optimize my character to the fullest. And then the third set is normally for boss battles. All right, now let's talk about kind of the resource management side of Arayashiki. Now, obviously, for Arayashiki, you kind of do it via this enlightenment gacha system where you can spend roughly about 300 times to summon at once, etc. And what happens is every single time when you summon, you also get some tokens where you can then spend in the shop. Now, first advice I'm going to give you is do not waste any tokens trying to go for this red power card. Absolutely not worth it. for two reasons. Well, three reasons, in fact. One, I already talked about right now in the meta right now with such as Seiya and Virgo showing around. Some of the best cards are actually in the yellow ones because you have your Ferocious as Fire and also the Speed one. They are both yellow, so you really want to go for them here. You also have Determined Heart, so that's one that's going to reduce your damage at the start of the battle. The first attack, that's also a yellow one. And you also have a weak version of that, the one increasing your defense for the first 3 seconds, and also in yellow. So right now, just in the meta right now, vast majority of the good cards are actually gonna be in yellow, which is why there's no point trying to spend lots of resources on one red card when you can get three yellow ones. And especially if, for example, if you want to counter towards Aldebaran's bounce mark, you really need your Ferocious Fire and the speed one up to level 20 or level 30 as soon as possible. So definitely try to spend it all here, trying to get duplicates rather than testing your luck on the red one. And this is the first reason. The second reason is, like I said, the red ones, there are actually some big traps here. One trap is the biggest trap, I guess, is Virgo Shaka exclusive. You're literally gonna cry if you spend so much into a red card and then turns out to be this, right? Absolutely no worse the risk. Second trap is that Athena exclamation, right? Like I said, a really good card right now in the early game, but in the future, as more god close characters are going to be released, more specters released, more gods themselves released, that power is going to go into your reserve. So not too worth it to trying to pull duplicates of that, not good. And also you have the ones like Excalibur one, like for only for Capcom Shura and also for Libra Shuru. They are good, however, it really depends on whether you actually use those two characters. So there's just too many traps in the red card in general, which is why I don't think it's a good idea to spend so much tokens on a red card. And the third reason is actually in the Chinese version of the game in the future, almost all of the light and dark characters will have their own exclusive Arayashiki. Right now, in the global version, it's only Virgo Shaka. However, in the future, they're going to release one for Poseidon. They're going to release one for Radamanthus. They're also going to release one, I think, for like Gemini Cannon, Gemini Sega, Evil Sega, etc. So definitely not worth using your token for red card now. If you do want to use it for red card, wait for future when more exclusive red cards are being released for the light and dark character that you're actually building, and that will be when it's actually worth it. Right now, it's just really not worth it. All right. Then what about experience books? You may ask. I think they are useful, but normally I think getting duplicates is more important than getting those books, experience books. So I generally still recommend going for duplicates of these yellow ones. If you have already, let's say, leveled up your ferocious fire or the speed one to level 30, and you don't want to go any further, I'll probably still hold on to your tokens for future exclusive red riot cards rather than trying to waste it on bugs. But in terms of the actual leveling, I recommend you just try to level up 5 set of cards as high as possible. This is mainly so that if you are ever blocked in your story maps or in any kind of progressions where it requires certain resonance level, you are then able to pump your highest riot cards onto your 5 characters to really try to push your resonance power as high as possible to try to overcome those story progression barriers. So that's kind of what I suggest. If you already have 5 sets completely maxed out, then I'll probably say yes, you can probably just chill out for a bit, spread your resources around, and maybe build multiple copies of a card rather than just one single copy. But for the time being, until you have full 5 set, I still recommend don't spread your resources across multiple cards. Just concentrate on 5 set of the best card and try to get them up as high level as possible.